Do you want somebody to tell you what to think all the time or not? I mean,
this is a great question you're asking, because it ties us directly back to why I started down this rabbit trail. I haven't forgotten. And that is this a scapegoat situation? No, we have to have some way of arriving at the station where everybody understands the truth, or at least enough people understand the truth that we heal, that there's reconciliation, and maybe even the potential for restitution for people who deserve it. But we can't get there because we went the political route.
Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. We've been talking to you a couple of times now. Actually, one of our very early episodes was about this. Way back in the day, episode 41 was about the Spillover Gang. And if you've been following us and our journey through what we've called C+, because we can't use the words, you'll know that we have a particular take on what has gone on with the, shall I say, the scientific and medical and research management of what we now can say openly is COVID-19. Today, we're going to kind of do a freewheeling conversation because, as you all know, Fauci was on the stand the other day in front of the Senate, and it got messy. It got messy, but he took the fifth. And Jim, you asked me sort of offline about this. It's like, do I feel sorry or something for him? What was your exact question? Because I think it's an important place to start.
Well, I asked if you had sympathy for him.
I had sympathy, yes. Well, we need a national scapegoat. Everybody who knows scapegoating can go and look at that. But somebody needs to stand up and take responsibility and say, you know what, I could have done better. I blew it. I'm sorry, something. To say, yes, this happened because of something that I didn't handle correctly. Now, we know he lied and a bunch of other crazy things that go way back, and there's already a case pending somewhere on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did an episode.
Just recently,
what was it? Episode 159.
159.
Hantavirus in the lab leak, where we talked about David Morenz, Fauci's assistant, who is under indictment. And so we will put that down in the show note. You all also referenced the episode 41 already now, COVID and the Spillover Gang.
Yep.
And I apologize for the quality of the video in that. This was early in our podcasting career, and I didn't have as good internet as I have now. And Bill Bill saves us. He does a lot to make the editing work here. So
everything except reproducing what you said using AI.
That day I was wearing a shirt that strobed. If you want to know what strobing is, go watch that video. You'll see
episode 41.
Yeah. But I apologize for the video. The content, I've just rewatched it, is still rock solid. I'm very proud of the work we did that day. And even the David Morenz episode 159, they'll both be down in the show notes, but I'm proud of both of those episodes. But Bill, the thing that stands out to me about what we did on that episode 41, COVID and the Spillover Gang, is how right we turned out to be.
Yeah, you were real early and real accurate with your understanding of the situation and your prediction about what would happen down the road. And this was 3 years ago, people. This was like
March. Of 2023, and we are recording in midsummer, late summer. We're getting into late summer already, 2026. So we're talking, what, 3 years and 4 months ago?
4 months.
5 months ago? 4 months ago. 3 years and 4 months ago. So, yeah. And there's still people to this hour pretending differently. I don't believe he is a scapegoat.
Really?
No, I do not. I know why people think that's the case, but where we landed episode 41 and even more emphatically episode 159, where we landed in those two episodes, we talked about truth and reconciliation. I put a finer point on it in the second episode that truth comes before reconciliation. Truth is a necessary thing before reconciliation. So we have to have a justice system, in part so we have a method of getting to the truth. And I think Rand Paul is very much going, there's people attacking him and saying that he's got an obsession and that he's a stalker. And I think what he's doing has been consistent since 2021, because that's when he started to get on this, was in the summer of 2021. I think he has been consistent in pursuing the truth, and I think he's been upset and frustrated by the level of obstruction that has been run against him trying to get at that truth. And it has been immense. And so Anthony Fauci has an opportunity to come in and testify again. He's no longer a government employee after decades.
Decades, a long time.
Yeah, in fact, the last position he had in government, a paid employee of the federal government, he was the second highest paid employee of the federal government. The position that he had goes all the way back to the Reagan administration and didn't end until Biden. So he was on board for a long time. He had an opportunity to come in and testify, and they had to get a subpoena to get him in. It was scheduled, and he dropped out with less than about a week to go. Said, "I'm not coming." And they had to subpoena him to get him there, which is why the setting is the way it is. And then let's go in and show what just a short clip of what the hearings were like.
Yeah. This from Wednesday, right?
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anybody you say fifth? Go ahead, ask me a question. Did you?
So that's what he did. I think it was 111 times. Is he pled the fifth?
Can I ask a real bonehead question here?
Yes.
Why? Why does he feel it's necessary to not tell the truth? Is he planning to do that some other way? Will there be a book?
No.
I mean, what's the game plan here?
No, absolutely not. And it is very obvious because we have documentation now that there was a conspiracy to withhold information from the country. And there is the possibility of a greater conspiracy, which is that many of the actions he took starting in January of 2020, to put this all in context, because people lose track of time, the lockdown started in mid-March. And the pandemic of the unvaccinated starts in the late summer of 2021 and goes right through the end of the year. Those are the two. So you could date this all in your head and you can remember what things were like. The vaccine's basically available all of 2021. And we're already learned that in May of 2020, they said you could take off your mask. So we're back to January of 2020. And were all of the actions that he subsequently took, or some significant portion of them, designed entirely? Was the purpose of the pandemic, maybe even the purpose of the lockdowns and all the other theater, such as the masks, 6 feet distancing, which wasn't based in science at all, was this about covering up what had happened in Wuhan?
It had to be, Jim.
I suspect it is, and I there's a lot of reason to believe this. I just want people to know it. I don't want to rehash all the stuff we covered in episode 41 because we did a fantastic job, but we didn't have the same knowledge then that we have today. And one of the things I'm frustrated about, Bill, is people insulting Rand Paul for, why is he talking about this? The pandemic's over. Why is he talking about this? Happened years ago. It takes this long to actually surface the truth.
Yes.
So the Spillover Gang, at the time that I did it, I was trying to be very, very tight and specific. And I told everybody that the scientists, they needed to be paying the most attention to were Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, who was technically Anthony Fauci's boss. He was the director of NIH at the time. And then 3 top level, all-star level, take them to the Olympics, well-known virologists. Christian Anderson with Scripps Research, Eddie Holmes at the University of Sydney, and Bob Gary. And I suggested very emphatically that up to that time, and it has continued to prove true to my knowledge ever since. I've not checked everything. I've not stayed on top of this topic, enough to guarantee what I'm about to say, but it was true at the time I said it, and it was true quite a bit subsequently, that if you looked at any news reporting on the subject by the mainstream where they were suggesting that lab leak was a conspiracy, or that the natural or zoonotic explanation was the best explanation of the evidence, if you saw that in the Atlantic or the New York Times or whatever, if you saw that in prominent regime publications, you would find those 3 guys, 1, 2, or 3 of them being quoted in the pieces, you would find out that they were part of the sourcing, because this was a small conspiracy. It turned out there were a lot of scientists that were questioning this, a huge number of them actually, and it has grown by the year.
Yeah.
They were doing what they could to suppress that. They were involved in a suppression effort. And that's largely what's been revealed now by Fauci's diaries. But
the subsequent,
there is one thing I want to recover here. And I didn't make many notes for today, but this is a set of notes I did make for myself. The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2 was published in Nature Medicine on March 17, 2020. So this is the first week of lockdowns. That's when that publication dropped. But that means it was being written before that. It has 5 authors: Christian Anderson, Andrew Rambaut, Ian Lipkin, Edward Holmes, and Robert Gary. Okay? Now, this is really, really interesting what I'm about to say here. This is new. I did not say this at the time because we did not have, in 2023, the complete list of people that were in the call. You say the call, Jim? Yes, the call. So Christian Anderson, if we're going back to the episode real quickly, we just got to set this tiny piece of context. At the end of January, sends a message to Anthony Fauci via email and says that, I believe he said that Bob and I, meaning Bob Gary, both think this has to be lab leak origin. And Fauci says, don't send any more emails. We're going to have a phone call. Okay. That phone call now happens on February 1st. They're saying that the lab leak couldn't have happened.
They're saying, okay, so they're taking a position that's opposed to science by saying that the lab leak could never have happened.
They did motivated work, the kind that a lawyer would do instead of a scientist, to demonstrate. They worked hard to demonstrate. So this is what's new. This is what's new. This is one of the things we've learned. We now know we've had this list for a while that I'm about to give. We didn't have it in 2023 when we did the spillover episode, but we've had this list for a while. But we learned something new about this list. So the February 1st, 2020 call had Jeremy Farrar organizing it. He's the director of the Wellcome Trust. Fauci, Collins, Anderson, Holmes, and Gary are all there, as is Rambaut, Faucier, Marion Koopmans, Mike Farzan, and Ian Lipkin. No, there's going to be 13, depending on how you count this.
13 total. Okay.
And because one of the people that was there is not technically a science, he's the UK government's chief scientific advisor, and that was Patrick Vallance. And I mentioned, by the way, a person that was not part of the group at this time. He wasn't in the club, but he was under the tutelage of Eddie Holmes and Bob Gary, Mike Warraby, we mentioned in the previous episode, because we were attempting to steel man the other side. And he was the guy that was doing the very best work arguing for the natural origin zoonotic spillover approach. He was very good at communicating these ideas on Twitter, and he was writing studies that at the time were mostly in preprint. And that's something we discussed at the time. But here's what's interesting about all the people in this call. How many of them thought during this call, we're on February 1st now, we didn't know this before. How many of them thought natural origin, zoonotic spillover? How many?
Do we know?
We do. We do now. Because Fauci
0?
recorded it in his diary.
0?
Fauci said it was 2.
2.
And we know who they were. They were Andrew Rambaut, spelled Rambaut, and Ron Fouchier, Fouchier. They were the 2 who believed this, and one of them, Andrew Rambaut, ends up being one of the co-authors of the Proximal Origins report. Okay, now here's what's significant about this. We have correspondence between them in Slack channels, email. We have testimony in some cases that has been given before Congress. Christian Anderson wasn't sure. He was the guy that sent the email to Fauci in the first place saying, it's probably, this has to be artificial. This has to be lab. And he was quoting, as he said it, Bob Gary. He was saying that, this is what Bob believes. Okay. So we have some documented proof now that Christian Anderson and Eddie Holmes and Bob Gary, 3 of the authors of this report, believed that it was zoonotic spillover. The only person that goes into this report in advance leaning this way is Andrew Rambaut. So we talked about this in the last episode. It was literally less than a week. We counted it. It was 5 days between the time they decided to write this report and the reservations of doubt that were expressed in advance. But now the Now it's shorter. It's 3 days. On February 1st in this call, according to Anthony Fauci's diary, only 2 people on this list, and we know which 2 they were, said we think the evidence goes in favor of zoonotic spillover. Everybody else said, nope, it's leaning the other direction. This is a problem. Fauci's not a scientist. He's a bureaucrat. He's not a doctor. He's a bureaucrat. It's a matter of which hat he's putting on and bringing to the show. He's like, holy cow, we have an issue. And if you start to dig into this, you find out that, oh my gosh, his fingerprints are all over the front end of this.
You asked me if I have any sympathy for Fauci. He made the wrong call. And the sympathy that I have for him is the same that I would have for anyone else who made the wrong call and then later discovered it was the wrong call. He decided apparently that it was in the better interest of the world to cover this thing up versus revealing exactly what was going on and turning the entire resources of the world loose and figuring out how to fight it. That kind of happened anyway, but he got in the way. And so I have sympathy for him making the wrong choice, Jim.
Does your sympathy change, though, when you gain information that suggests, not more than suggests, I mean, there was already a lot of evidence, and now it's overwhelming.
Yeah, no, it doesn't change. He made a bad call.
So I'm the same way as you in this respect. There was a police officer who kneeled on a man's neck, leading to a summer of protests and riots.
Yeah.
And I believed that that man was guilty. That officer was guilty. I believe that the prison sentence that he currently has is justified. I believe it sends an important signal. I don't necessarily think this is a scapegoat. I understand why people would suggest that in that situation too, but I actually believe he committed a crime on that spot. And yet there were people who were cheering when he was sentenced, and I can't join that because I say, well, it's still a human being.
It's a human being.
It's unfortunate that we have to come to this point of justice. But I want to be clear. I think that Anthony Fauci is a human being, but this isn't a mere mistake. He lied, and it's criminal what he did. And lots of death, we could debate the number, but lots of death occurred as a result of it.
Yep.
Potentially over 1 million deaths in the United States. I don't actually know that I believe that number, but potentially over 1 million deaths. And that makes him culpable and responsible and accountable. And accountability is necessary because we have to get to truth before we can get to reconciliation. Truth is the predecessor to reconciliation. I'm for truth and reconciliation, but you don't get reconciliation without the truth.
Are we ever going to get to the truth on that? There's so much that's coming out that's just fluff.
I think he should be prosecuted.
Yep.
I think he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
But he's been pardoned.
You know, and that's actually a problem because the president of the United States is intending very, very seriously. He already knows he's going to do this. You could take this to the bank. I'd be willing to bet somebody about this. He is going to pardon his kids at the end of his term. The entire family has been profiting from this current White House run. They lost a lot of money under the lawfare that was waged against them, particularly after he left office. But they have recovered. They've more than recovered. His net worth is at an all-time high right now as I'm talking to you. So I think he's going to pardon. So it's he made a statement. He said out loud, the pardon's like one of the most powerful things the president has. So I'm not going to go up against Biden's pardon. He pardoned Fauci, right? He didn't say he won't do anything with it. He started talking some nonsense about AutoPen, which is an irrelevant issue. The pardon, though, I want to point out, is federal in nature. It doesn't cover the states. So the Florida Attorney General has already said he's going to start looking into what can be done there. And so I don't know that Fauci's safe from that. And that might be one of the reasons he claimed the fifth. It would not have covered him perjuring himself in that hearing. It covered stuff that happened before Biden left office.
Yep. So legally, the fifth was the right thing to do because anything he would have said would have definitely been used against him.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I'm in agreement with the fifth. The other thing, though, that I'm not quite clear about is the scapegoat thing. So truth and justice, I'm down with that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to draw and quarter this guy, but he needs to be responsible for what he's done. And
I don't
that is not a
even,
scapegoat.
I got to be honest with you. As much pain and suffering as he caused, and I do believe he caused a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. I really do believe that.
Mhm.
A little bit of a hit in my family. I had an uncle who fell and had a head injury. He died. He succumbed to his injuries within a week. Where his wife, they did everything together. They were separated from each other, and she was not allowed to see him in the hospital until they called her in. They called her in because they needed to pull the plug.
Yeah.
And they were not telling her the whole truth about what was happening to him while he was in there. It was really a disgusting situation. And she told them she would sue the hospital if they labeled his death a COVID death.
Mhm.
Now, you might say she was hysterical, but I think she was doing something rather sound. She had not been able to see her husband, and that just shouldn't have happened. They did this all over the place. I have another friend. I just heard from him this morning on another great thing happening in his family, but he lost his grandmother, and they had to watch the funeral on
A
Zoom.
video. Yeah.
It's absurd. Punishment to me is not what we shouldn't be punishing adults. I don't believe in punishment. It probably sounds too blanket. I'm sorry, we don't have time to go completely down that rabbit trail. But what we should want to do is provide restitution and reconciliation. So victims should receive restitution. And to the best we can, we should try to patch up and heal the fabric of society and social relationships in these situations. And justice is part of the tools by which we do that. And because most people won't take responsibility for the bad acts they do, they want to do the crime without doing the time. So they won't tell the truth. And that's what's happening here. And he's running out the clock. He's 85 years old. Yeah. Maybe the Democrats get the Senate back in next year. He's trying to run out the clock so that he can basically stay a step ahead of Paul. So he's really playing the time game. But the only way we get at that, well, let's put it this way. This actually gets to probably the most important thing we'll discuss this whole time. People are not seeing truth that's objective and right in front of their face in the same way. They're not seeing the truth itself. So I watch a lot of YouTube, and I'm sitting, there's a picture that's kind of burned into my brain. I saw this roughly a week ago. And it was a picture of a head with a brain in it and lines going all over. And it said, can we actually see the truth? Or are we all just telling ourselves stories? Now, it was pithier and whatever. I don't remember the exact wording, but you get the point, right?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Is our brain basically a story-making machine? So let me throw out three quick things. Abortion. You can't have a discussion about abortion in this country without people lining up into their side. And by the way, they all have an argument. Everybody knows what they think about abortion. Now there are people who don't want to have that conversation at all, but the people who will have that conversation, they all have a position that they can articulate that is clear. And there is not a shred of evidence in any way, shape, or form that you could give them that would move them a micrometer. Nothing would make a difference.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let's get closer to the present, though. Let's get closer to something that's really happening right now. And we had Renee Good, which we did an episode about. We'll put that link down in the show notes to you, too. You could see what happened on that video, but everybody had a motivated reason for seeing what they saw. And instead of actually seeing the truth of the video or even being open to the evidence of the video, most people, most of the time, lined up on their predictable partisan team. If you believe that ICE is a good agency doing a valuable service, you believed that Renee Good was attempting to run him over. If you knew anything about driver's ed, if you knew anything about the use of force, deadly force, if you knew anything about those subjects, you should have been on Renee Good's side. Just objectively true. But okay, maybe that one's so close because of the angle of the car that we could have a debate about it. But then they shot Alex Preddy. And the administration, with no shame in their game, starts making the most anti-Second Amendment case made by a U.S. president in the last 50 years. Barack Obama has been president. Joe Biden has been president. Bill Clinton has been president. George H.W. Bush has been president. Richard Nixon's been president. This was the most this is the kind of thing that would have set the NRA's hair on fire if it had been done by anybody else. And they said, you're bringing a gun to a protest? He was shot, murdered in cold blood on a city street. And people said, well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to say this is across the board, because now there are people who don't want to hear it about Anthony Fauci. All this evidence is in front of us and they don't want to hear any of it. They're sticking their fingers in their ears and they're going, la, 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 la. I can't hear you.
People, this doesn't help, because the more you dig in, the less we have a democracy and the more we move toward authoritarianism. Is that what you want? People sitting on both sides of this thing and can't talk to each other? Do you want an authoritarian government? Do you want another Hitler?
Okay.
Do you want somebody to tell you what to think all the time or not? I mean,
this is a great question you're asking, because it ties us directly back to why I started down this rabbit trail. I haven't forgotten. And that is this a scapegoat situation? No, we have to have some way of arriving at the station where everybody understands the truth, or at least enough people understand the truth that we heal, that there's reconciliation, and maybe even the potential for restitution for people who deserve it. But we can't get there because we went the political route. So anytime you decide to make this a political thing, you're going to begin having division, because it's no longer science. It's no longer a scientific question. It's a political question. It's not a moral question. It's a political question. You see what I'm saying? Like, you've decided that you're going to use this mechanism. So politics, Bill, is about taking sides, not finding the truth. It's about your partisan team winning. It's about making sure that you score points. So I just want you to visualize, like if you're listening to me right now, but I'm drawing my finger across the middle of the screen, and above the line is power, and below the line is truth. And power is heavy. It's grinding the truth to nothing. There's a choice that's being made when you play politics. You're choosing power over truth. And truth has no room, because truth is disloyal. Truth isn't part of the team. Truth doesn't advance the political cause. And people sell their souls and join into a blob, and they lose their individual agency in the process because they've stopped pursuing the quest for truth. So one of the biggest spiritual development points in my entire life comes when I meet a priest. His name was Father Earl Fox. He was an Episcopalian priest. And he said to me something that I have never, ever, ever forgotten. And it revolutionized my thinking. Our first commitment is always to the truth. That's not what they normally teach people in Sunday school. But if you read the scripture, it says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. That's Jesus' claim. So if he's making that claim and your first pursuit is for the truth, do you think you'll find him? It's not a threat. It's not a threat to any Christian belief system to say, my first commitment is to the truth. What is the truth of this matter? I want to know what's right or wrong. No apologetics can be justified unless we're talking about the truth. Apologetics are a series of truth discussions. What is the truth of the matter?
This show is brought to you by the Zero Aggression Project. Zap newsletter subscribers get alerts when each episode is released. The Zap website is also the pathway by which you can contact us by email and support the show. This program operates thanks to tax-deductible Zap contributions, and we appreciate your support. So, zap the state, and have a nice day.
I appreciate where you're coming from there, but we're dealing in two different realms.
We are.
The spiritual truth, the grace that we need to extend in this situation doesn't care about what's happened in the world. It doesn't care about the physical facts. So if you want to talk about that truth, I'm right with you. But if you want to talk about the other kind of truth, which is, well, I saw it this way and that's my truth. And then the other guy says, well, I saw it this way and that's my truth. Those things are objectively not true.
Objectively not true.
Those
Objectively
are
not healthy.
Yes.
And they're harmful to you.
And they're harmful. And that's the situation in which we are trying to apply the law of grace.
Yes. So your relationship and mine starts with an interview from you to me to join you and a friend of yours, John Krotek,
on
John. A short-lived podcast you had, Authentic Human Outliers. And in that first interview that I did with you, one of the ideas I discussed with you that day was the idea of a media fast. So I'm on this other interview where I'm being asked questions about Fauci, and I brought this up. because the host had started to blame the media. They didn't do a good enough job covering it. And I want to say, this is one of the reasons I'm not a conservative, by the way, because there's always people sitting there going, well, if this institution would have done its job, or that institution would have done its job. The media, as I told them, is a business. And they're after the clicks, they're after the ratings.
Yep.
So they're not after the truth either. The only way that you could get them to want the truth is if their customers, their viewers and listeners, their readers demanded it.
Yeah, we've seen the devolution of what people want over 50 years. But that's what sells advertising. So who cares about the truth? Exactly. I know there's still newspapers out there that do, so forgive me if you're one of those newspapers.
Well, it's almost by accident when it happens, or maybe the stakes are so low that they actually occasionally do their job. But I pointed out on this show that you think that this is only happening in politics. It turns out it's not. So we've had Jerry Bowyer on this show, and he talked about it. He talked about this expressly during the interview that we did with them.
Yep.
And we could put that one down in the show notes too if we want. But Jerry used to appear on CNBC, and he had an epiphany when he saw two boxing gloves coming to the center of the screen and exploding as the opening of his segment. They hit each other and exploded, and he's like, oh my gosh, I am in the midst of the conflict. Mm-hmm. We have a better word that we use at the Foundation for Harmony and Prosperity, which is one of my paying gigs, which is that the conflict machine. It's a better term to describe politics.
Yep.
It's a system based on coercion where there must be losers. You notice I didn't say winners. I said losers.
Someone takes a loser.
Someone has to be taken from. And that's what the fight is over. And everybody knows how high the stakes are. So you start to understand why they're attracted to this. But I go all the way back to the media fast. And I say, 2 weeks will work, but 6 weeks seems to be ideal. And I said, you know how like if you start drinking Diet Coke, but then you give it up for 2 months and then you come back and you pick up a can, you're like, whoa, why did I like this?
Oh,
you acquired a taste for it. You acquired a taste for it.
Yep.
And that's what happens with this media. You get used to it just being part of your daily process or your weekly process, and you start to not realize what it's doing to your mind. But if number one, you took a fast for about 6 weeks, and number two, when you came back from that fast, you were aware of one thought. This was the second idea I gave, that this is a conflict machine and that this is war. Politics is war by other means. So in the interview I did with you, I believe I used this very same example because this is when I had the epiphany. There used to be a television show called Hardball with Chris Matthews.
Right.
And yep. I was in a group blog all the way back in the, oh God, this is almost 17, 18 years ago now. I would close every post with Hardball Delinda Est, as in Hardball must be destroyed, right? Because what was going on there is that they would take, let's say inflation is really hit, and now they're doing a story on the price of eggs. Oh, we just got this brand new report saying inflation and eggs have gone up by this much or whatever. What Chris Matthews would do on Hardball is he would translate that into a question that was about a family and their needs at their table and how those are going to be solved. He would end that discussion and instantly turn over a new one. What was the impact on Barack Obama and Mitt Romney in their race? They're running against each other. What are they going to do? And specifically, he wanted to know, how are they going to spin it? Spin, meaning literally, how are they going to either break from their principles or deceive their base to get the votes they needed to win? So instead of the issue being, what's the impact on you, Bill? What's the impact on everybody here in audience? The question was, what's the impact on Mitt Romney? Poor Mittens, he's trying to win an election.
Yep.
If you take 6 weeks off and that approach to the next time you watch CNN, or the next time you read the New York Times, boom. You're going to see it. You can't unsee it anymore. And we talked about this all the way back the very first time you interviewed me.
Yep.
And that's the thing. And that's what I said during this radio interview.
That media fast will take pounds off of your thinker. You will be so nimble when you come back from that fast. Your thinker will surprise you with what it sees and how it reports those observations to you. I know I'm kind of still hung up on this scapegoat thing. How do we get out of this mess with regard to COVID and Fauci? What's the reasonable, like, project the way forward? If we could say to to Washington, D.C. Here's how to get through this with the best possible results for everybody, not just for the people elected to be there. What would that be?
Yeah, I think this is where I want to land the plane.
And is it even possible? I mean, I'm not a cynic, I question things, but I still have hope. Is it even
I do
possible?
too. I do too. I wouldn't be sitting here talking if I didn't. I would go do something else. I believe that what we're doing matters, even if our impact seems low. I believe it matters to speak the truth. That's why I do it. I believe that, by the way, it matters most to me. So, if I'm sitting here talking to you, I got to start to live by what it is I said. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
First, I want to say on the meta level, I am enthusiastically in support of Rand Paul and what he is doing right now. And he should not stop. And I hope he continues. We have to get to the truth. And I don't see any other way that that's going to happen. I don't even think the administration is going to help. So I hope that he continues to do this and that eyes are open while this happens. But
what would that look like? I mean, we can't impeach Fauci, but we can bring civil charges against him through the states.
Oh, I think actually it's possible to bring criminal charges against him.
Big criminal charges. And
next week, the Senate, probably around the time we drop this episode, the Senate will meet to determine what his charge should be. They believe he obstructed. So they'll figure out what that looks like, and they will send what's called a referral over to the Justice Department. We'll see what happens. I'm not hopeful the Justice Department does very much with this because of the president's desires to protect the pardon power, but we'll see. We'll see. There's a moment, if they can find a way to appeal to Trump's ego, there's a moment in which he got very mad at Birx, Dr. Birx, when she was in the Oval Office, and she reaches out to Fauci, and he records this in his diary to seek consolation. She wants a shoulder to cry on. Because
I was towing the line for you, and this happened.
The president really ripped into them and said, "You guys have destroyed my presidency. You've ruined me." And this happened, by the way, I don't know, like May of 2020. This is before the summer, and long before the vaccine had arrived on the scene. I mean, this is fairly early still, but he's starting to realize he's been had and hoodwinked, and he was incompetent, and circles were run around him. He didn't know what he was doing and what he was up against. He didn't know what had been done to him right before he got there on January 7th.
Nobody was bringing the factual information.
But I believe your question was what this looks like. And I'm saying that I want Rand Paul to continue with this thing. So that's what's happening and likely to happen. It should happen.
That's the bare minimum as far as I'm concerned.
But I think individual spiritual health matters. And even if the only thing that happens out of what we're doing here is that the people who are within the sound of our voice are moved to be different. Maybe they do the media fast. Maybe they see this entire equation differently. Maybe they're not bloodlust, because I thought even some of Rand's social media before this event was a little bit off. They want to get to the truth and they want reconciliation. That's what justice looks like for them, more than vengeance. If we get there, if we start seeking the truth first instead of making questions political, if we get there, and it's only us, and maybe we're just a small select remnant for now, but we just keep talking to people about what it is, and maybe there's a peace that exudes from us because we're aware of this. If that's all that comes out of this, that's good. You have to recognize you're not God. You're you. And being you is a lot to manage. Being me, oh my gosh, really difficult to manage. That's where the real healing begins. Before you go save the world, save yourself, and then find others who also want to save themselves. They want to have a spiritual walk that is refusing vengeance, which is a lot of what the scapegoating mechanism is about. They want to be driven by something higher and a bigger goal in the end, which is that we don't need to use force against each other to get things done. And we are looking out for each other because we're motivated by love. It's a concept here that we've called grace.